Here's the pieces that I sent through the sander. Now, while all of the pencil lines have pretty much vanished, I still have a little bit of areas here that didn't quite get sanded down. Instead of making this thinner and thinner and thinner, all we're going to do is arrange them. So we're going to cut this off with the tapering jig, which we'll do in a second. So all I want you to do is take your pencil and you're going to mark the edge you know you want to get cut off. The other two, there's another one. And this one has a little bit on that end. Great, so those four I know I want to taper down and cut off. From here, we need to mark 90 degrees from these marks, either on this side or on this side. We're gonna taper either here or here or there or there. You're not gonna taper on opposite sides. So you turn it, and it doesn't matter which direction. I'm just gonna guess, say that one. So I see a knot here, so I'm gonna cut some of that off. So I'm gonna do this one, so most of that will get cut off. This side is perfect on both, it doesn't matter. And same on this one, it's perfect, doesn't matter. Put the ends that need to get tapered down towards you. And when we set up the jig, that end will get cut off, And we're gonna grab one of these jigs. And it says right on it, the direction. It says cut that way, so make sure to cut this direction. And it tells you what to set the fence to right here on the end. It says set to 3 inches. So we'll set it to 3 inches, right there. And the blade height should be correct. And then the last thing you need to worry about is, remember all these defects, these parts that I wanted to cut out, they're right here, I marked them. You want to cut these off. So to make sure this area is cut off, you need to put whichever end they're closer to, in my case they're all on this end, closer to me. So when I cut, I'm gonna set it in this jig, in the part closest to where I'm standing, and cut. So this end really won't be touched until about 6 inches down. But then it'll cut off most of this end. So here's one mark, here's the other one. So what I want to do is put it so that one of the marks is down on the table, because then I'm going to turn. So I'm going to cut this side off and then turn it so it's facing up so I can cut the other end off. So make sure that you've got one cut facing the blade and the other cut down to the table. Okay, so I'm going to cut the one that is facing the blade, the one down on the table is holding it flat, and you run it through with my thumb on the back, holding it in. Of course, the guard will be down, but make sure your hand stays in front of the blade. Don't let it cross this edge where the plate is in, this red plate. So we put the guard down, turn it on, and push it through. Keep it tight against the fence and tight against the back of the board here. Notice that my left hand is not moving. I hold it right here until I can't hold it there anymore. And then go right through, easy. Then you'll just pull this out the back. I bring it back. Now I'm going to turn 90 degrees, and there's my other line that I wanted to cut, and do the same thing. Right here, push it in, hand on top, thumb on the back, and I don't let my left hand go beyond that plate. Then eventually my left hand is free and I just go all the way through and I'm done with that one. Repeat the same technique on all 4 pieces. Now's a good time to take a sander with the rough sandpaper, the rougher stuff, and sand off all these machine marks. It's really hard to see on the camera, but if you look close, you can see teeth marks from the table saw all the way up. And we want to sand all that off. Not to mention, we still have the rough faces that came from the factory. One of the best ways I've found to make sure that you've sanded everything and you didn't get mixed up, did I sand that or not? Simply take a pencil and draw some lines on each face. And when the sandpaper erases all of that, chances are you did a pretty good job of sanding. Sometimes you'll see like this, some colored chalk. That's very common on wood from the mill they mark it to know which is which. That'll all sand off immediately. So sand them all down, then we'll move on to the next step. Now that all the legs are sanded and all those pencil lines you put on have been sanded off, we're still going to fine sand them later on. We've just taken out the rough marks. I want to round off these sharp edges, and instead of doing it by hand, we're going to put a little more of a round on it using a small hand router. Now I've got a couple of these little one-handed ones in there, so please make sure you grab the correct one and more importantly that the right bit is in. And again, I'll try to zoom in on it, but you can see there's a bearing at the top that spins, and there's a very slight 1/8 inch round. So this bit has an inside curve of 1/8 of an inch, so it's not very big. And we're not removing very much. It's simply to round off lightly these corners so they're not sharp anymore. Now you always want to route opposite the rotation. So when I have it like this, you can check with the blade, but the blade is spinning this way in a clockwise direction. So I'm going to go away from me on this side. If I were going on the other side here, I would go this direction. So since we're not removing a ton of wood, it'll work both ways. Don't get me wrong, I could go both directions. But try, as I'm this direction, to go away from you, and then just turn and continue. Now remember, 2 of these have a slight dip. So you'll go straight and then it dips down for the taper in the leg. So as you go, the router has to take that dip. So as you go across it, if it didn't quite get the corner where that dip goes down, go over it again until it looks good. Make sure you have your safety glasses on, and let's cut each edge. Okay? Hopefully you saw right here where I went and then I had to start over and go down. You also may have seen at the beginning where I kind of pulled and went the wrong direction. That's okay. I'm not removing very much, but I needed to get this end. I don't really want to get the ends here, so turn and do it again. All right, now that I'm done, each of these ends has an 1/8 of an inch round over. And your worst enemy on routing is just tilting. So try your best not to tilt as you go down. Keep it flat. If this is hard to control because you're a beginner and you've never done it before, you are welcome to clamp this down to the table if that will help, or have somebody help hold it. Just please make sure your fingers are not where that blade is going. Otherwise, you're going to end up getting your finger a little bit. Repeat this on all 4 of them, and then we'll move on. You also are going to need to take a little sandpaper and kind of sand out lightly what you just routed, especially on the harder woods like oak or cherry. It won't take a lot, but sand it down.